Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just back again with another lesson in line with the ones that I've been posting recently. I've been going through the prophetic books of the Bible in the Old Testament and looking for confirmation of what I presented in the book of Revelation, the sequence of events, just consistent language and all that kind of stuff. And the book of Zechariah is an excellent one. I've posted a lesson on Zechariah 10 and 11, reaffirming the sequence in the end times. And Zechariah 2 to 6 goes through it as well in a little bit more detail. And so, again, we're going to be looking for the 144,000 being raptured, taken away, delivered as the first event. Then we're going to look for a 3.5-year tribulation period where 2 witnesses will be prophesying. And at the end of it, America will be destroyed. The place that they're in will be destroyed. And after that will be the wrath of God. And then after that, the kingdom of heaven is established. And so, not a surprise, here in Zechariah, in the earlier chapters, we see the same thing. And so, just starting off in chapter 2, we'll see that Zechariah chapter 2:13 reads, "Be silent, all flesh, before the Lord, for he has roused himself from his holy dwelling." And so, if a person goes through Revelation or just goes through my video, which summarizes it, it comes across very much as a church service, but in the heavenly realm, above the firmament, in the spirit world. And so it starts off very solemn, assembly, with, Christ, the 24 elders, and, a book with seals on it, which represents the book of Revelation sealed up. And, and only Christ after his sacrifice could those seals be loosed, and only by him. And so this is, again, the way Zechariah starts off as well. Not going into as much detail as in Revelation, but this is what's happening, here in Zechariah 2:13. "Be silent, all flesh, before the Lord, for he has roused himself from his holy dwelling." And so now we're going to look for something related to 144,000. They're referred to as priests, and the elect, no guile, virgins, and all that kind of stuff. And so Zechariah 3 starts off with a vision of Joshua, who is the high priest. And so, going through this, again, this whole chapter is referring to this group of people. And more specifically, you can see here in Zechariah 3:8, "Hear now, O Joshua the high priest, you and your friends who sit before you, for they are men who are assigned. Behold, I will bring my servant, the branch." And so after this, again, is a consistent sequence where Joshua, who is the high priest, is with all of his people, his friends who are like him. So this is them in the spirit world. And so they are taken away, and then after that, next comes this branch, and I'll explain what that is. That is a reference to the 2 servants that will be prophesying in the Great Tribulation period. So again, this, quote, sign, this vision of Joshua, the high priest, him and his friends, represent the 144,000, which God's purpose for them is to make them priests, for God. And so this is the very, very first thing, and then it's also segueing into the next thing we'll be looking for are these branches, or these 2 branches. This branch represents an offshoot of Christ and his ability to communicate and speak to people on earth, and he has decided to do that and spread the gospel through his 2 witnesses. And so again, just doing a quick summary review from Revelation 11. This chapter refers to the 2 witnesses, and specifically they're described here in Revelation 11:4. "These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks standing before the God of the earth." And so that is what comes after, the 144,000. And so, so here in Revelation 11, again, it starts off, "Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar, and them that worship therein." And so that is consistent with Zechariah 3, and Joshua and the high priest, they're already in the temple worshiping. And so This is alluding to the fact that the 144 are already taken away, And then it goes into the two witnesses prophesying for 42 months. And again, they're described as 2 olive trees and 2 candlesticks. And so Revelation 14, I would say, makes it a little bit more clear about the sequence. This to me is a wonderful summary in a little bit more, like I said, explicit language. Here you see Revelation 14 starting off explicitly saying the 144,000. And they are singing this new song before the 4 beasts and the elders. No man can learn the song but them. So they are in the spirit world. They're amongst God. Then it describes some of their characteristics. They are the first fruits. And then verse 6, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. And so we see the 144,000 worshiping, singing a new song in the spirit world. And then we see the gospel being preached. And so Revelation 11 is a more sort of drilled down version of that. And so now we'll be looking for the gospel being preached. And again, no surprise in Zechariah 4, we see that. And so first thing, Zechariah 4, I'll read partway through 10. These 7 are the eyes of the Lord, which range through the whole earth. Then I said to him, what are these 2 olive trees on the right and left of the lampstand? The lampstand represents Jesus Christ. And a second time I answered and said to him, what are these 2 branches of the olive trees, which are beside the golden pipes from which the golden oil is poured out? So the golden oil represents the true gospel being distributed via these 2 olive trees, or the 2 branches of the olive tree, and these 2 golden pipes. And, that is the pure, absolute gospel that is in no one's mouth but these 2 people. He said to me, do you not know what these are? I said, no, my Lord. And he said, these are the 2 anointed ones who stand by the Lord of the whole earth. So this is God's left and right hand side. Those spirits, 2 spirits that are closest to him. And in my Revelation video, I show strong evidence that it is John the Baptist and Moses in the reincarnation. And so here we see the sequence holding. Now we have 2 witnesses who are prophesying in America, and then that place that they're prophesying after this 3.5-year tribulation period would need to be destroyed. And so again, not a shocker that happens in Zechariah 5. We see language here that is very consistent with Revelation 14. A vision of a flying scroll, and again I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, a flying scroll. And he said to me, what do you see? I answered, I see a flying scroll. Its length is 20 cubits, and its width 10 cubits. And he said to me, this is the curse that goes out over the face of the whole land. That's a light, flat earth evidence, the land having a face. For everyone who steals shall be cleaned out according to what is on the side, and everyone who swears falsely shall be cleaned out according to what is on the other side. I will send it out, declares the Lord of hosts, and shall enter the house of the thief, and the house of him who swears falsely by my name, and it shall remain in his house and consume it, both timbers and stones. And so these 2 witnesses who the God of the Bible is communicating through, and also through this, quote, flying scroll, will consume this house after they're done prophesying. And so that is referring to America being destroyed. And again, we see in Revelation 14, the beginning of 144,000, and then we see, and I saw another angel in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. And so it is through the effort of these 2 individuals, through plagues and through their prophesying and preaching, that the gospel will be preached throughout the entire earth. And so, again, we see a consistency there. Now, in order to be consistent with the sequence of events, after this, we see in verse 8, Babylon is fallen, and so it's been destroyed. And then now in verse 10, what we'll be looking for is the wrath of God, which is to be poured out without mixture. And this is going to be administered to the people who have taken the mark of the beast. And so, it's described again down here, thrust in thy sickle and reap, and all that kind of stuff. And so this is everybody that's left on the earth right now is on God's left-hand side. And so you can just see there's just a massive amount of killing, and blood and death and all that kind of stuff. And so, again, people who have, quote, made it to this time are on God's left-hand side. And so we'll be looking for that in Zechariah as the next step. And so Zechariah is seeing a vision of a woman in a basket. Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, 2 women coming forward. The wind was in their wings. They had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the basket between earth and heaven. Then I said to the angel who talked with me, "What are they taking? Where are they taking the basket?" He said to me, "To the land of Shinar, to build a house for it. And when this is prepared, they will set the basket down there on its base." And so this is referring to now, Shinar is a place in the Hebrew Bible for Mesopotamia in the Middle East. And so this region is described in many different ways. In the entire Bible, described as the Valley of Decision, Jehoshaphat, Megiddo, Armageddon. The wrath of God will take place. And so now we see the focus shifting of the spirit world and the angelic forces away from Babylon's destruction, because that's been done, as written here. And it shall remain in his house and consume it, both timber and stones. And then now the focus is shifting to the Middle East. And so everybody on earth now at this point is on God's left-hand side. And so we're looking now for the wrath of God being administered. And if you read Zechariah 6, a vision of 4 chariots, this section is now referring to the 4 winds of heaven, which are used to describe destruction, from all different angles. And there are literally 4 angels that are in charge of this. And this is referring to now, the last, final, and major destruction and the wrath of God. And finally, after that, after all this killing and bloodshed, now the kingdom of heaven will be established, and then God will dwell with man, and then that's alluded to here. The section is called the crown and the temple. And here in verse 13, it is he who shall build the temple of the Lord and shall bear royal honor and shall sit and rule on his throne. And there shall be a priest on his throne, and the council of peace shall be in between them both. And so, again, this is all consistent. It's following the same sequence of events. And so, we have God's elect, his high priests, led by Joshua, it looks like, will be taken away. And then we have 2 witnesses prophesying in America. And then that place that they're prophesying will be destroyed or consumed. And then the focus moves to the land of Shinar. It's described as Lebanon. It's described as the Valley of Decision, Jehoshaphat, Megiddo, Armageddon, and all of that. And, God's wrath will be administered there, and he will be with his elect and his angels, and then the people of the earth will have the audacity to fight against God, their very creator. And then after that, the earth will be replenished and the kingdom of heaven will be established, and God will dwell amongst men, and his leadership now will govern the earth, and all of its actions. And so we look forward to that day. This is, again, not shocking. Zechariah is internally consistent with Zechariah 10 and 11, like I posted earlier. And this same sequence of events is happening really everywhere in the Bible. I'm going to keep going through it. I finished the prophets. Now I'm going to the Apocrypha. But just with 2nd Ezra alone, we know that it's confirming this. But, if I see anything else, in the Bible, I will keep sharing it. But it looks like we have enough examples of this, that this is indeed the way it will go down, literally, if the God of the Bible chooses to speak in our lifetime. Hope everyone's doing well. Bye.